This is Investor Perspectives. I'm the host of Investor Connect, Paul T. Martin, where we connect startups and investors for funding. In our new Investor Perspective series entitled Faith-Based Investing in a Post-COVID World, you'll hear our guest's investment thesis. As the COVID pandemic passes, we emerge into a new era. Faith-based investing space is now undergoing tremendous change as we shift to a post-COVID world. Faith-based investing takes precedence with many investors in the financial industry. We have investors and startup founders describe the changes coming up. We hope you enjoy the show. Investor Connect is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors and startups for fundraising. Please consider donating $100 to the program to help others in their investor and entrepreneur journey. You can find the donate button on the investorconnect.org website. Our first guest is Steve Gattina, founder and CEO at Pray.com. Pray.com is the world's #1 app for daily prayer and faith-based audio content. Pray.com is the easiest way to incorporate prayer into your daily life. Pray.com is the only religious app in history to become a top 5 grossing lifestyle app in the Apple App Store. The company has been named as one of the best places to work by the Los Angeles Business Journal, as well as one of the world's fastest growing mental health apps by Sensor Tower. Steve, thank you for joining us. So when your investors funded your company, what were they looking for to make that go or no-go decision, and why did they choose you?
It's a great question. I'm not sure what all the different criteria was for all the different investors that we have. We have some incredible investors. We have Science, I mentioned, Greylock, Spark Capital, BMG, Founders Fund. We have a long list of truly incredible investors. And I think they all have a different set of criteria. Market size, right? Sometimes that's called TAM, total addressable market. Market size is always a criteria. For us, we have one of the biggest markets on planet Earth. So we benefit from an extraordinary market size. For other investors, they like to look at brand. What's the brand possibility? And Pray.com is, today we're the world's #1 app for daily prayer and faith-based audio content. But when we first took investment, we were nothing, right? We were a company called Pray. And some investors, they say, hey, can Pray be the dominant brand in this space? And will Pray.com be the #1 brand? So for some investors, they had conviction that we would be the #1 brand in the space. Other investors like to look at team. And so some investors like to look at team. I'm a repeat entrepreneur and I have 3 co-founders. One of them is also a repeat entrepreneur. And I think we had a very well-rounded team across tech and media. So definitely a subset of our investors were looking at team. I would say total addressable market, can your brand or company be the #1 in the entire industry, and team? Those are probably the 3 major points that the investors looked at when thinking about Pray.com.
Our next guest is John Silverling, Director of Private Markets at OneAscent Capital. OneAscent Capital Investment Solutions manages a variety of values-based investment strategies designed to help investors live aligned with what they value most. Their broad suite of investment solutions includes turnkey models, individual strategies, and retirement portfolios that combine a disciplined investment process and a commitment to values-based investing. John, thank you for joining us. And so what do you look for to invest in general? What's your criteria?
Sure. So we, at OneAscent Capital, we're looking at different types of investment opportunities. For us, it's a unique model. We describe it as a 3-dimensional alignment model when we evaluate companies and funds for that matter. And those 3 dimensions are, #1, is there a values alignment? So we are a firm that focuses on values or faith-based investing. And so we want to find out that the companies that we're looking at are aligned with those values that we're seeking to have. And that's really one of the key things for us. The second one is impact alignment. So we see this as an area that is growing, and the opportunity to have companies that are doing great things, solving problems, as I said before, but are having great impact on the world around them is a really key component for us. And we're not trying to tell them what type of impact they're supposed to have. We really leave that to the people, the individuals involved. But what we want to see is we want to see that they are looking to proactively have some sort of an impact, whatever those goals are. And then how are they intending to approach the way to achieve those goals? How are they looking to have that impact? What are the metrics that they're using? Do they have a track record in terms of looking at those types of things and performing against those types of impact goals that they have, whatever those goals may be? So first is values or faith alignment. Second is impact alignment. And the third one is financial. This is an approach that we have that we do believe that you can be excellent in it. You can get a great return by aligning with the values and the impact. And so we want to make sure that the people that we're working with recognize that as well. And they're not looking for somebody to come in and expect some sort of a concessionary return just because we all have a similar belief of values or even looking at having that positive impact. Now, there are great investment vehicles and great things that can be done kind of more on a concessionary return perspective in the impact investing space. And we applaud the people who are doing that, but that's not what our approach is. Our approach is to kind of have that alignment across all three of those things: faith values, impact alignment, and the fundamentals, the performance of the fund or the company.
Our next guest is Endel Liias, founder and managing principal at Nexus Impact Advisors. Nexus Impact Advisors is a boutique consultancy specializing in faith-driven impact investing. They work with a range of clients from individual investors, angel networks, and family offices to foundations, nonprofits, and investee companies. To increase the flow of capital from purpose-driven investors to high-impact organizations that create wealth, reduce poverty, and effect meaningful change. Endel, thank you for joining us. So what do your investors look for to invest here? What's their criteria?
So I will give you an example from the Ambassadors Impact Network. We have very clear criteria that one can read on ambassadorsimpact.com under the entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, and there's an eligibility page. But on the business side, we're looking for businesses that are post-revenue, so it's later stage angel investing. So post-revenue, usually within 18 to 24 months of break even. And we are, aside from that, we're mostly looking for equity investments, sometimes debt, but mostly equity. But aside from those few criteria, we're industry agnostic. We are open to overseas investments, but do primarily focus on the US. That's where the interest is for our particular investment set. We look for opportunities where we would come along with others. We rarely are the lead investor in a round. We tend to come alongside another lead. And we're looking for companies that can effectively utilize anywhere between $200,000 and $5 million in capital. And so that's on the financial side. And then on the spiritual side, I mentioned that the framework that we use is a 3-part framework. And so the first thing we look at is the values of a company. And what that means is their biblical principles that are codified or included in their operating documents, their bylaws, their mission, their vision, things like that, that clearly ground them in their faith and the extent to which they do that. That's the first one. The second one are in the activities. And this is both internal and external. So internal examples of activities will be chaplaincy, prayer, things like that. External could be the extent to which you have an opportunity to be a witness for the gospel and share that with outside stakeholders, or just volunteerism in the local community, some practical manifestation of the gospel. And then the third one is the product or service itself. As you might guess, it's more rare to see a product or service itself that is overtly proclaiming the gospel. There are examples that we have invested into a biblical meditation app or into some Christian films. But more often than not, the companies are meeting a felt social need in a particular community where there is a need for their product or service, and they can demonstrate that by loving on their customers in a way in terms of providing good, affordable access to those products and doing so in a caring way. So there's a couple different ways the product or service it does, but also I should say that at times, and very often, product or service is not going to score highly on this spiritual impact framework. And it's really in the values and the activities where we see most of the company's efforts in this regard. And so we look for companies that meet these criteria, and we have a very formal application process that runs about 8 weeks. And it includes a few different applications and some calls and some memos that go out to our network. And then our investors in our network can make individual investments into those companies, since we are structured as a nonprofit and not as a angel network that pools funds. We actually give the diligence to the investors to make the investments themselves.
Our next guest is Jeff Schaeffer, CEO at CommonGood Capital. CommonGood is a financial services firm aligning capital with the value and goals of investors. They provide advisors a curated platform of private alternative investments that mobilize capital to generate competitive returns as well as meaningful impact in communities around the world. Jeff, thank you for joining us. And for your investments, what's your criteria to make an investment here? For example, how profitable does it need to be before you say, yeah, that's a good deal?
Misconceptions out there is that you have to give up return to either align your faith or to have quote unquote impact. Ask that question outside the United States and there's a much more thoughtful answer. Inside the US, it's like, you can't do both. That's all being challenged significantly. And so there are investments, however, that people do make that it's what I would call concessionary. It's not a return that you would normally try to achieve. It's too low, but because of the mission and what they're doing, you're willing to take that. That's where a lot of Americans assume that most faith-driven impact investing is. That's not necessarily the case. You can find it. There is a huge swath that we define as market rate returns, where we're trying to find investments that you don't have to check your brain out to the side. Instead, you fully engage that in the process. And then you just make sure that there are other non-financial metrics, such as spiritual integration, are included in there. The last thing I'd say is for us, ultimately, it's investing in great people with great ideas. And then we also invest in things, or I invest in things as well, that resonate with my own values and my own passion. And then we're constantly evaluating either how that business is running or the product and services that they're making. Are they achieving the metrics on the impact, the spiritual integration, the spiritual impact?
Our next guest is Kenn Kelly, CEO at Never Settle. Never Settle is a global award-winning digital marketing agency helping businesses build a bigger story. They serve both enterprise and small businesses and develop impactful user experiences through technology and marketing solutions to help you build a bigger story that drives results for your business, all at a price you can't afford. Kenn, thank you for joining us. So what do you look for to make an investment in this space?
First off, to me, prayer is really important. So to hear clearly from God. And I feel like he's been really specific in highlighting things. And then in that process of my own due diligence is really seeing, are people, is their worldview based on biblical principles? Is the authority in their life coming under the authorship of Jesus, biblical teachings? And then from there, I start looking at, is it a viable business? Can they make a profit? And through that, are they enriching the lives of the people and the communities around them?
Thank you for joining us today. As always, be sure to leave a review, subscribe to this podcast, and share it with others. Let's go start up something today.